sorry. I tried, but then that. Yeah.
Good day, mate. Ow! He's getting me under the table. Hi, everybody. Hi. We're okay. We're okay. It's just another episode of Case Files with Kat
And Ashley.
And here we are.
And the kitty.
And Louie. Hey, say hey. All right. So, how are you?
I am good. How are things over there?
I mean, 8 feet away, doing fine.
Great. The airflow is perfect. Drinking. I remembered beer this time.
What? Okay, so what are you drinking?
So one of my favorite breweries, I think everyone knows where I live already. But anyways, one of my favorite breweries is Equal Parts in Houston. Oh, yes. And so this is their Gorlami. They come out with it every now and then. They hadn't had it in a while. I went there, drank it there, and then they had 2 4-packs left. So I got one of the 4-packs. And now they're all out again.
But it's a very pretty can.
Yeah, so I actually...
Looks fancy.
So they're also the only brewery that makes an IPA that I drink, which is the Extra Fuzzy. I drink their IPA. And they have a pale ale that I also drink from there. Their summer pale ale called 3 Seashells. Mm-hmm. So they're the only brewery that has an IPA.
Stop the presses. There is an IPA.
And my pregame one was Galveston Island Tiki Wheat. I'm a big fan of Galveston Island Brewing.
Yes.
That was just kind of what I was, starting with. Now I've moved on.
Yeah, awesome. So we are. That actually what kind of is the Gorlami? Like, what is it?
It's an Italian-style Pilsner.
Okay, so very light, very bubbly.
It's light, it's bubbly, it really refreshing.
It looks like the can art.
Yeah, when you pour it, it's really nice
bubbly.
Color. It's really, I could drink it all day, every day. Like, during COVID where they didn't have the brewery open, but they had, like, outdoor seating. Mm-hmm. This is what I would just go there in the middle of the summer, be 200 degrees outside, couldn't see anybody. I could sit at my table and just drink my Gorlami.
It's accurate. 200 degrees, Texas, summer.
I mean, it was 100 today. So, it's just like... Was
it really?
Yes. Yes. Let me tell you.
I'm wearing long sleeves.
For a fact. I was outside for 2 hours. And so I am aware, yes. 100 degree weather. Anywho, what are you drinking? It's a very fancy little... I like the blue colors and stuff.
I do. The can art is, once again, fantastic. It's from Shiner, actually.
Oh my gosh, that's really
Texas
interesting
beer.
for Shiner.
It's the Brewhaus Brew IPA. It's called Tex Hex.
Oh.
So it says India. So it's an IPA brewed with cactus water.
Oh, fancy.
Watch out. I can't taste the cactus water, but yeah.
Well, I don't know what cactus water would taste like, so.
It's...
Like the water from a cactus?
Like water.
I felt like that's what you were going to say.
Yeah, it's just light. Oh. Yeah, kind of... it's light. I mean, I've eaten, like, fried nopales and stuff, but yeah, it's... Oh. That's how you say it in Spanish, nopales. You can eat it like those big, flat, round. You can fry them up, put them in eggs. So
I don't know, but it sounds good.
Yeah, it's delicious. It's like a bell pepper. It doesn't have like a whole lot of it's not a strong flavor. It's just a good flavor. Yeah. So yeah. So that's nopales. Hey, so we are inching. We're inching up towards 150, yo. What?
Whoop, whoop.
I know, but Jason, add the sound like wah, 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 like add that one. But what we wanted to do was to make sure that we reminded you that we need your story submissions. If you are interested in partaking, I'm talking to you, Glenn. If you're interested in partaking in our 150th episode and you live across the pond, Glenn, then we want you to be a part of it, Glenn. And so we're going to hit you up and to make sure that happens, we're going to make sure that Sarah is here. And so, yeah, it's going to be a fun time.
And so if for whatever reason you can't physically be here, you can't call in, you can leave us a voicemail on our website and we'll play your voicemail during the episode.
And Laura, we got your story. Thank you very much. And I don't know what it's about, but Ashley read it because she's the one that keeps track of all that. So I don't know if is it about your mom? I don't know.
Paranormal. So anyone if you have something that's happened to you that's true crime related, paranormal related, you live in a haunted house, whatever it may be.
If you live in a haunted house, can you send us a video?
Yes. Please do that. But if you just want to tell us the story of how your house is haunted, how you've been visited, true crime, something happened in your small town, whatever it is, you've had something happen to you, send it to us.
Do you feel like you have like a bunch of little stories, or do you have like one big story? Like that's kind of,
Me?
I feel like I have all of these little,
I have a bunch of, small ones.
like the little instances, not like I lived in a house that was haunted all these years and just continually went on.
Listen, people, we just want to know about your trauma for our entertainment, okay? Like that's
Why
really
is it
what.
trauma, though? Why is it trauma?
I mean, like, okay, look, if I'm 5 and I see a ghost floating in my house, it's going to traumatize me just a little bit. I don't mean like,
Oh yeah, if it was like straight up from like Ghostbusters.
We just
remember that lady?
We just laugh at my trauma all the time. Haha, she was born in a barn. So funny. So I'm just saying, it would be nice to share that experience with some other people.
So for those of you who are just listening,
who've never listened before,
we apologize. But
okay, I'm sorry.
Both Ashley and I were Toastmasters together. In fact, she won't admit it, but she talked me into it. She told me it was pretty easy and fun to do. And it was really easy and fun to do. But we ended up becoming such good friends that we would piggyback on speech days. So I would go first and make everyone cry. And then Ashley would go next and she would say something super tragic, like I was born in a barn. And then everybody would start laughing. It was like comedic relief. And she would say, yes, I'm so glad. My misery is so funny. I love you so much. Okay, so let's just get into it because I got a lot to talk about. Okay, so my trivia for you today is actually like there's no questions. It's just a story. It's actually another like little story.
Okay.
It's a story about a little robot.
I thought you were just a lovely lady.
A little lady.
I thought you were really about to say, no, it's a story about a lovely lady. Like, and break out into the Brady Bunch song.
Here's a story.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Serious face. Go.
Of a little robot. Okay, so this robot is actually called Hitchbot.
Oh.
I know.
Never heard of this.
Never heard of this either. And so when I was just doing research about hitchhiking, which is great,
yeah,
just great times. So the inventors of Hitchbot were David Harris Smith, and I'm so sorry because I'm going to ruin this man's name, Frock Zeller.
Okay.
Could be Frauk.
Could be.
Mm-hmm.
We all know if you can't say it, I can't say it.
So it was a humanoid robot. So the purpose of this robot was like whether or not humans could trust robots. And, like we're moving in that direction, right? And so there was this kind of like idea, like, can a robot comfortably hitchhike across Canada, right? Okay. It's bizarre.
I feel like Canada's unfair. Everyone's kind of much nicer up there than here.
So it actually did. Hitchhiked across Canada, Germany, and the Netherlands.
Wow.
Yeah. So Smith, David Harris Smith, he also hitchhiked across Canada 3 times. And that's like, to me, just bizarre, I guess. Like, that's just, to me, bizarre. And Zeller had designed the robot to learn about how people interacted with technology and asked the question, can robots trust human beings?
Oh, that's a good question. No one ever asked that question.
The robot was not able to walk. It completed its hitchhiking journeys by asking to be carried by those who picked it up. The robot was able to carry on basic conversations and talk about facts, and was designed to be a robotic traveling companion while in the experiment. It was also given a social media account on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
So like people would see this robot on the side of the road, stop by and pick it up?
Yes. And it had like arms and a thumb and the whole thing. So the robot had a cylindrical body, and it was mainly like a plastic bucket with like these 2 flexible arms. It was very rudimentary. Okay. Like I'm going to send you the picture. It's very rudimentary. The top section of the body was transparent. It contained a screen which displayed the eyes and the mouth, making the robot approximately humanoid in an external appearance, right? It was super small. It was maybe about this big, 2 feet. Like it wasn't very, not very big. It was yard sale chic was how they described it.
Okay.
Kind of like accordion kind of style tubing for the arms and these like plastic gloves for the hands. Like it very, very kind of, it was yard sale chic. So that way it evoked trust and empathy and had a child's car seat base to be easily and safely transportable.
Oh.
So it was prepared. It was powered either by solar power or by automobile cigarette lighters. It had a GPS device and a 3G connection, which allowed the researchers to track its location. And it was equipped with a camera, which took photographs periodically throughout its journeys. So the robot's hitchhiking was reported by the press in many countries. So from July 27th, 2014 to August 21st, that's Jason's birthday, 2014, it hitchhiked across Canada from the Institute for Applied Creativity, and that was in Halifax, Nova Scotia, to Victoria, British Columbia. So really boom, across the whole place. At first, at a First Nations powwow, it was given a name translating as Iron Woman.
Wow.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
The robot was so popular that its GPS had to be disabled sometimes to prevent crowds bothering those who took it to their homes.
People would take it to their homes?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you just drop it off on the street or you're like, let me just take it home overnight. It's Canada. I mean,
oh yeah.
I don't know.
I'm just afraid if it was here, like people would, destroy it.
All right. I'll get to that. So a second HitchBot machine was made, and in February 2015, it hitchhiked around Germany for 10 days.
Wow.
Germany is awesome. So for 3 weeks in June of 2015, it hitchhiked around the Netherlands. HitchBot then attempted to cross the United States from Boston to San Francisco starting July 17th, 2015. But after 2 weeks, August 1st, 2015, however, a photo was tweeted showing that the robot had been stripped and decapitated in Philadelphia.
I'm honestly surprised it lasted 2 weeks.
The head was never found.
Morse. I hate it here. I hate it here. I hate it so much here. I really do. I mean, I love some people, but I hate it here.
So we can see the Zeller, the co-creator, said, we can see on all of our data that the tablet and battery and everything shut off at the same time. So it must have been when they vandalized the bot.
I just like how it went all over Canada, all over Germany, all over wherever else. And then it comes here and doesn't even make it 2 weeks.
So the HitchBot's body had been found by some good Samaritans who had located the roving robot through a regularly updated map on its website. One of the reporters said, they sent us images and it's really beyond repair, that there's not a single wire inside and all the things are broken. Come on, Philadelphia.
Did it get a picture of the people that did it before it got...
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like that would be great if it did.
Oh, that would be so good. Anyway, so that's like HitchBot made it through other countries until the United States. USA. So terrible, isn't it?
But you know what the problem is?
Drag queens. All right, so we're kidding. Okay, so today my story it's about hitchhikers, backpackers, really, but yeah, they took rides. Yeah. This is a story about an Australian named Ivan Milat, and he was also better known as the backpacker murderer.
Oh, I've never even heard of this. I'm excited.
This happened in our lifetime. You were actually alive as well. So I know.
I love that you threw in that I was actually alive.
But I think that we think of hitchhiking specifically to be a 1970s phenomenon, that we sort of wisened up in the 80s or 90s. I don't know that that's true though. However, okay. So I'm going to talk about Ivan Milat, and the backpacker murderer. And so he is an Australian, but I am going to tell you about his history and then we'll get on to the bad and gory stuff. Sorry, I don't mean to tell you the bad and gory stuff, but here we are. Okay. So Ivan was the son of a Croatian immigrant and laborer, Ivan Milat, and Australian Margaret Piddleston, who Stephen married when she was just 16.
Oh,
I guess back in the day. So Ivan was the fifth of 14 children. If you guys could see Ashley's face.
Well, I mean, just one sounds like a lot, and then you say 14 or 15.
14.
Unless I'm saying you say, oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm like, I feel like I'm having a heart attack already, and I just don't even mind little children. 15, 14, whatever seems so excessive.
I mean, it's a lot.
But much power to you if that's your thing. Not my thing.
Not my thing. I just can't imagine. I love children.
I have dogs. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
That seems like a lot too.
14 dogs seems like a whole lot to me as well. So
cats, though, you can have lots of those.
I can't have 14 of anything.
All right. So he was the fifth of 14, and they first lived in the suburb of Sydney, and then before they moved to Liverpool in New South Wales. Anyway, so from the outside, the early years of his life were pretty unremarkable, right? I mean, people didn't really think much about them. They weren't like super crazy people. His father worked in Sydney after he migrated from Croatia after the First World War, while his mother cared for all of the children. So he was younger. His father, Ivan's father, was very strict, though. I mean, with 14 children, you have to be a little bit of a disciplinarian, I think. You can't just like let them get away with shit. You we're going to put you to work. You got to earn your keep. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like after 14, they're free labor, I guess. I don't know. They must have had them in very quick succession, because that's just woof. Yeah. There's that cat talking.
He has a lot to say about 15 children.
He has a lot to say. So his dad actually started a tomato plantation at the family property in Moorebank in Western Sydney. And that's where he put all of his sons to work. Now, 10 of the 14 children were boys. 10 of them were boys. Now, I have one, and holy moly, that's just a lot. Neighbors described the family as pretty insular, and young Ivan did not stand out amongst his siblings. He was just...
What does insular mean?
They kept to themselves.
Oh.
But as they grew older, things got a little bit different. His parents stopped having as much say over them, and I think that was like getting into like the preteen years. Yeah. And he was fifth, so by the time the older ones were teenagers, it probably got to be like, oh man, fuck it. Like, y'all do whatever you want. But petty theft and troublemaking were pretty par for the course for the Milat boys. They started to do breaking and enterings. How would you say that? How is that plural? Breaking and entering?
I guess.
A lot
Multiple
of those.
Breaking and entering. I don't know. But can you imagine just a gang of 10 showing up to rob you? I don't know. Sorry, go on.
Right. I mean, that's just like, and then the younger ones are learning from the older ones. Yeah. Like, how are you not like perpetuating this cycle, right? So 7 of the 10 actually had run-ins with the police, and they like were arrested. Like, young people were being arrested. So juvenile theft, juvenile crimes. And they became really well known with the police. So it was just like, man, like they just started that cycle.
Yeah.
They are in the prison cycle at this point. Ivan particularly was the only one who developed any kind of antisocial behavior. And one of those behaviors was when he was 10, he actually cut up a cat.
You could have like given some kind of warning.
I'm sorry. I know that it's going to get much worse
I know,
for
I'm just
people. I
saying.
know. I know how you hate the thing. That's it. That's the only animal that we're going to hear about.
Okay. People, sure. Cats, animals, dogs. I don't want to hear about it.
You're like, people, fine. But he actually ended up in like a boys' school when he was 13.
Yeah.
So 10
that explains whatever you're about to talk about.
Yeah. At 10, when all of that, if you can kill an animal at 10, things are not good for you.
Yeah.
Like, we just know what's going to happen.
You kill an animal and you get sent to a boys' school. I just feel like that is a setup.
2 things, you know, and like his parents were still together at this point. Like, he had this huge family. He had this huge, like, this goes back to that nurture versus nature. Are you making a psychopath, or are you born that way?
Yeah.
So by age 17, Milat was in juvenile detention center for theft. And at age 19, he was involved in a shop break-in. But in 1964, he was sentenced to 18 months for that breaking in. And a month after his release, he was arrested again for driving a stolen car and sentenced to 2 years of hard labor. Not just like prison, like hard labor. And then in 1967, he was 22, and then he was sentenced again for 3 years for theft. So like, he was getting in jail, getting put in jail, getting out, getting put back in. Like, he wasn't very good at any of it, because he kept he would never stay out of jail. So he was at this point spending more than half of his life in prison at this point, right? In April of 1971, so he is now 26, Milat was charged with the abduction of 2 18-year-old hitchhikers, one of whom he raped. So
what age was this? I'm sorry.
Escalating. He was about 26.
Okay.
And so this is 1971. While awaiting the trial, okay, so they lived. They described him. The cops were like, we know it's him.
Yeah.
So he didn't want to go to jail again. So he faked his own death.
Of course, naturally.
He went to a bridge where a lot of people kill themselves, and he put his shoes on the like railing and then just disappeared, and he left, pretending to have died. So it was to avoid prison. But then he got word that his mom had gotten sick and she was going to die. So he was like, you know what? Fuck it. Here she is taking pictures of the cat.
Don't worry about what I'm doing. Just tell your story.
So he was involved in a string of robberies. He was doing all these other things, but he finally decided to just go ahead, fake his suicide, flee to New Zealand for a year. But when he was rearrested in 1974, but when that case of those 2 girls went to trial, he was acquitted. They didn't have enough evidence on him, but he decided at that point he was never going to let anybody ever again be a witness to his crimes. Yeah. So at that point, he was like, well, now I've got to kill them. He wasn't just going to rape them. So, of course. So he's so awesome. He was so awesome. So sorry. Oh man. Okay. So by the time he actually went to jail now, so like he came back to Australia, he got rearrested, and he was fine. He was acquitted and he got off. When he decided to come back and live back where he was, there was, I don't know if you've ever been to Australia. Australia is a beautiful continent. It is a beautiful continent. I've only done the East Coast, which is not, man. I mean, it's a continent. It's not
Sounds like a case file needs to pay for
I know.
a trip for it.
Patreon. No. But like, I've only gone I went to Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne. I've like gone, all the way up East Coast to, I don't know how to pronounce it. Cairns. And it, like it's just this beautiful, just going up and down the East Coast. It's beautiful. Yeah. And then you can go all the way to the West Coast and there's this whole other beautiful thing, but like kind of in the middle, there's just a lot of, it's the wilderness. There's forests and deserts and there's just all kinds of things. It's just I just hear about all the things that can kill you from Australia. So like, I haven't really thought a whole lot about visiting. Please Google the spiders of Australia.
No, thank you. Done. Out.
I am terrified of spiders. And when I faced a fear of going in the ocean and I went scuba diving and I was like, oh, I'm a badass because I like faced a fear. And I'm walking on this trail and I was ahead of everybody. And then I turned around to be like, oh my God, you guys remember when such and such happened? And they're looking at me, but all their eyes just went up. And I was like, what? And they said, run. Because there was, when I turned around, a spider that was, the body was the size of my head.
No, I would be dead. We would not be here right now.
It was this orange color. It was the size of my head with these legs coming. So imagine my head with like legs coming.
I think I'm about to throw up.
I was like, whoa! Like I mean, seriously, the animals of Australia. Like, what the fuck?
Sorry, I totally derailed us, but you
did. Okay.
I get really nervous when I think about Australia.
I love Australia so much. It's one of the top 3 places
it's definitely
in the world.
Beautiful, right? I'm just not trying to go there.
It's one of the top 3 places in the world to retire. Fact, as an American, like that's one of the top 3 places.
Like I say, it's definitely beautiful. I'm just not trying to go there.
So obviously, I'm moving up to this man being a murderer, and I already called him the I know what. I've already called them the backpacker murderers. So murderers. So I'm just going to go ahead and get right into that. So by the time the initial discoveries in the Belanglo State Forest, several backpackers had been reported missing. So one case involved a young Victorian couple in Australia. Frankston. From Frankston, Deborah Everest and James Gibson, both 19. And they had been missing since leaving Sydney for Confest near Albury on December 30th, 1989. Another related to Simone Schmidl, she was 21, from Germany, who had been missing since leaving Sydney for Melbourne on January 20th, 1991. Similarly, a German couple, Gabor, Neugbauer and Anja Habschied, had disappeared after leaving a King's Cross hostel for Mildura on December 26, 1991. Another involved missing British backpackers Caroline Clark and Joanne Walters, 21 and 22 respectively, who were last seen in King's Cross on April 18th, 1992. So the discovery of the victims, there was a sign at the entrance of the Belanglo State Forest this is a forest. This is like that place that I think you did you have no cell service.
Yeah.
Like where you just go to put the dead bodies. I forget where that was. It was like Yosemite. I think it was like that 50 miles of there's no laws or something like that.
Oh yeah. Now I remember what you're talking about, where there's like no laws about dead body. You can technically,
So like they were all pretty close to one another. When the bodies were discovered, they were all really, really close to one another. So on the 19th of September, 1992, 2 runners discovered a concealed corpse while in the Belanglo State Forest. The following morning, police discovered a second body 98 feet away. So when I said, like, he was just dumping, like they were crudely dumped. They weren't buried. He
wasn't even trying, just
right. Like he would just kind of grab a branch and put it,
Yeah.
He wasn't really doing a whole lot to cover them up. Police quickly confirmed via dental records that the bodies were those of Clark and Walters. And so they were the British backpackers who were 21 and 22. A search of the area failed to uncover any of the other missing backpackers. However, when British backpackers were found brutally murdered in September of 1992, The Sun ran the headline, "Beast of the Bush, Brit Girls Victims of Oz Serial Killer." The newspaper speculated that the killer could be a fiend, this is a quote, "fiend responsible for the disappearance of 20 people in the area over 20 years.
Oh my goodness.
That's never been confirmed, but that's sort of like, I think, the worst case scenario. In October of 1993, a local man searching for firewood discovered bones in a particularly remote section of the forest. He returned with police to the scene, where 2 bodies were quickly discovered and later identified as Gibson and Everest. They were the Australian Deborah Everest and James Gibson. They were the Australian couple. The presence of Gibson's body in Belanglo puzzled investigators, as his camera and backpack had previously been discovered somewhere else, 75 miles to the north. Yeah, so he was like just...
So he was putting in a little bit of effort to not like...
Yes, I guess. Like, but he was literally just like kind of dropping them. So he could have been driving and then like, I'm going to go out here and drop stuff.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't... Yeah. I felt like it was kind of sloppy. I feel like
it was sloppy, but it wasn't like he just put everyone in the same. That's what I was thinking when you were talking about the first part, that he put everyone in the same, you know what I mean? Like all the bodies were in the same place. I was like, that's pretty lazy.
So on November 1st of 1993, a skeleton was found in a clearing along a fire trail in the forest during a police sweep. It was later identified as that of Simone Schmidl. And so clothing found at the scene was not Schmidl's, but matched that of another missing backpacker, and that was her backpacking partner Habshid. Oh my god, I'm so sorry if I pronounced that so wrong. On November 4th, 1993, the bodies of Habshid and Neugbauer were then found on a nearby fire trail in shallow graves 160 feet apart. Examination of the remains showed evidence that some of the victims had been tortured and did not die instantly from their injuries. And there were two things that really stuck out for me of what he would do. Yes, he tortured them, but not in the way that I don't think that we've ever covered anybody that's tortured in this way before. He was very skilled, and there wasn't anything like in his past that would give reason to why he was so skilled at doing this, but he would stab them in the spine to paralyze them.
Oh my gosh.
And so they were alive during like that whole time, right? So like they wouldn't die, and he would sexually assault them or whatever, but however he knew that was like his thing, where he would...
Oh, that's so awful.
Right. And so but he also had rifles. He would also shoot them. He would shoot his victims, sometimes after not sexually assaulting them, not anything like that. But there was one or two victims where like they were shot in the head multiple times, just like without feeling, just bam, 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 just kind of this weird, and then their hiking buddy would be left to watch. And I think that that's a sort of torture. Yeah. Right. And so then he would take that knife and do the paralyzing maneuver. And then he would keep them alive for who knows how long. And it was even speculated that he would leave them for dead and then come back later. And so like,
my God.
But that's not confirmed, but they feel like they were alive for a long time. Like they didn't bleed out, which I don't even understand how that didn't happen. Yeah. But it kind of got... They were like more and more. He was really into guns. He was kind of this cowboy, and I sent you some photos where it's like he almost like wants to like Billy the Kid, Butch Cassidy. He has that handlebar mustache, which was very popular in the 70s, I think. But he loved guns, cowboy hats. He kind of had this Western kind of thing. He was always meticulously put together. He shaved every morning. He didn't smoke. He didn't drink. He took very good care of his body. That's crazy. He had a very clean house. Yeah. He paid a lot of attention to his yard to make sure that everything was nice and orderly. But he was also, obviously, he was also very abusive to his girlfriends. He would, I imagine because he was so meticulous, if things weren't orderly, that would make him very, very upset. So he had a very bad temper. So that honeymoon period was really nice. I mean, you can imagine. But if you got lazy one day, if you were like, I don't want to do anything, and then all of a sudden you're getting beat up because you didn't feel like doing laundry, he was just a very appearances mattered, and interesting. I think Israel Keys was kind of the same way.
Yeah.
He took very good care of his house and his stuff and himself. And, he didn't drink. He didn't eat a lot. He drank a lot, but he didn't eat a lot. Okay. So there was evidence that the victims did not die instantly from their injuries. There were a lot of... So in response to all of these things happening, so at this point, this is the 1st of November, 1993. So in response, there was a task force containing up to 20 detectives and analysts that were set up for the New South Wales police. So they were like, okay, we're now going to start really looking at this. They thought that these people were all connected. The New South Wales government increased the reward in relation to the killings to $500,000. And this is in 1993, $500,000. After developing their profile of the killer, the police faced an enormous volume of data from numerous sources. Investigators applied link analysis technology. And as a result, the list of suspects was narrowed from a short list of 230 to an even shorter list of 32.
Wow.
I know. Speculation arose that the crimes were the work of several killers, and there's still some people who believe that he did not act alone, that one of his other siblings, brothers, or maybe a sister, were a part of that.
That's interesting.
But there is one brother. His name is Boris, but there is a brother who's been ostracized from the family because he spoke out against Ivan.
Yeah.
That he'll say that, no, there wasn't another person. None of his, even though they won't speak to him and they hate him, he will say up and down, they're not capable of participating. Speculation arose that because they seemed to be so intricate that there must have been two killers, but given that most of the victims had been attacked while as pairs, because it must be hard to get two people at one time when you're one person, but he had a gun, they didn't. He had power immediately, and he would tell them, because there were several people who did survive, he would tell them that he wasn't going to hurt them. I'm robbing you, or I'm just going to rape you, and then I'm going to let you go. You're going to be fine. There was always sort of that he had the same MO across time and time again.
Yeah.
On November 13th, 1993, police received a call from Paul Onions. He was 24 at the time, super handsome. He was from the UK. And on January 25th, 1990, Onions had been backpacking. So this is after things have now been in the news.
Yeah.
Right? Paul had been backpacking in Australia, and while hitchhiking from Liverpool towards Mildura, he accepted a ride from sort of a super casual, hey, you need a ride? You look like you could use a ride. It was a guy known as Bill, and he was kind of in what looked like a Ford Ranger, there wasn't, or a Bronco, kind of that sort of SUV at the time looking vehicle. He was about a kilometer from the Belanglo South State Forest, excuse me. Bill, however, they were chatty. He was being really casual, very charming, like, oh, where are you from? Are you out here by yourself? Are you expecting anybody? Is anybody waiting on you? Are you going to be meeting anybody? Does anybody know that you're on your way to Melbourne? Like all this kind of very, so Paul started to be like, this is weird. Why are you asking me so many kind of like very specific questions?
Oh, yeah.
So then he pulls over and he says, I'm sorry, I have to go to the back of the car real quick. Because we're about to lose.
That's not weird.
We're about to lose like radio signals. So I got to have my tapes. And Paul's interview, he gave one interview, not to the police. He gave multiple to the police, but like on TV, one interview. And he was like, I thought it was weird because like there's tapes in the center console. Like he can, you're looking at him as the passenger. He's like, that's weird. And he, at that point, started to realize, like, man, this guy kind of stopped talking. He sort of shut down. He was like, I've never hitchhiked before, so maybe this is what it's like. If someone kind of doesn't want to talk to you anymore. And he started thinking back, like, man, he started like being really racist against Asian people and like the indigenous people. And there was just a lot of like, there were things that started to like click in his brain. Something's not right. Something's not right. Something's not right. So Paul gets out of the truck. He gets out of the truck and he is immediately yelled at by Ivan. Get back in the truck. Get back in. What are you doing? Get back in. Get back in. And he's like, no, fuck this. I am not. So he was like, what is this guy doing? What is this guy doing? And then so he was like, oh, sorry. Okay. And he kind of half gets in. And out comes Ivan with a gun. He was like, you know what this is, right? And Paul takes off. His backpack, everything's still in Ivan's truck. And he just starts running. And he gets tackled. He gets up. He starts running again. And he gets tackled. All the while, there was a mom and her kids driving in her little van, like a little VW Vanagon looking kind of thing, is driving in the other direction and is watching this like young man run, get tackled, stand up.
They did see it.
She's watching, and this young man is going, stop, stop. He has a gun. And she's like, I can't help you. I have children in the car. And he's like, he basically like lays down, like stands in front of her car. And she's like, get in. And then she puts it in reverse and hightails it out of there. She saved this man's life.
Wow.
With her kids in the car. And she's like, this guy, because she was like, I'm not getting involved. She didn't know what it was about.
Well, yeah. I mean, you see a man like, and you've got kids in the car for sure.
And he's like, stop. He has a gun. Yeah, help me. I'm like, oh, God. First of all, it's a gun. You can still shoot me. And then second of all,
I'm surprised he didn't shoot at the van. Yeah.
Well, he had run far enough that it wasn't going to, it was a handgun.
Oh, okay.
And so then, I mean, I think he did.
For some reason, I was saying it'd be like a rifle.
I think he did try to shoot at the van, but it didn't do anything. And they just hightailed it backwards.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And the reporter was like, what was Ivan's face while you were driving back? And he said he was smirking. Ugh. Which is like just the worst. It's just the worst. Anyway, so he did report it to the police and they were like, that's it. Yeah, that's
well, it's good to know it's not just our police.
Like, well, that was just a robbery gone astray, kind of a thing.
Even with the mother being a witness, they were just like,
well, it still could have been a robbery, but they like weren't putting all the pieces together, like, how could it be that this man who's been killing couples and 2 backpackers at a time, this one guy got away? He probably acted the exact same way that he did with everybody else.
Yeah.
He had his MO and there was somebody who was like, F this, something's not right.
Always trust your gut.
Always trust your gut. God. Okay. So on the 13th of April, 1994. So this was in November of 93, they got a call and they were like, meh. On April 13th, 1994, detectives refound that note from Paul Onion's call. And Onions' statement was corroborated along with that mom, along with the girlfriend of a man who worked with Milat. So like all of these parts started to go bloop, 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 bloop. And it was a very quick bump, 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 bump. Like it just all happened. The rest of it happened really, really quick. So police surveillance, because they had this idea of who it was, like they had Paul come back to Australia and he picked him out of a set of pictures. He looked at it again, picked out that same man, and it was Ivan. There were all these things. But they needed some hard ass evidence. They needed, you need the smoking gun. You need something, right? Yeah. You need all of that. He said, he was holding up this kind of gun. Like you needed to put all of these things together. So they went to surveil his house. And police had recently learned that Milat had recently sold his silver Nissan Patrol 4-wheel drive, which is that sort of like boxy, what I was saying, like look like a Ford Bronco, but it's sort of like very boxy. They don't have those here. I've never seen a Nissan Patrol before.
I've never even heard of it.
Again, never even heard of it. So so after the discovery of the bodies, he tried to ditch his car. So there's like, okay, that's sus.
I would have tried to ditch it as soon as that man got away. You know what I mean? Like as soon as someone who I tried to rob and kill got away, I probably would have been like, gotta get rid of this.
I guess, but if you're, well,
maybe in his mind he was like, thought he would never get caught.
That's true. Okay. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. That's probably until they started to see the bodies and then everything, when things started to get into a little bit more of the public eye. Yeah, that's a good point. Like as soon as, yes, that would be smart. Police also confirmed that Milat had not been working on any of the Daisy attacks and acquaintances also told police about Milat's obsession with weapons. He had a lot. When the connection between the Belanglo murders and Onions' experience were made, like when they finally were like, this shit's like very similar.
Yeah.
Onions flew to Australia to help with the investigation, and that's when he pinpointed Milat, and they're like, boom.
Yeah.
But still, there wasn't, you need more. You need a solid case, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just it. But they did arrest him at his home on the 22nd of May, 1994, on robbery and weapons charges just relating to Onions' attack. So just with that one, they're like, let's arrest him for what we have because we have him. But we still have all of these other bodies. And so how are we going to connect them? So they surrounded the house. The search warrant of the search of Milat's home revealed various weapons, including a .22 caliber and Schutz model. I don't know. It's a rifle and parts of a .22 caliber Ruger rifle that matched the type used in the murders. And so, of course, they had to do the ballistics and they had to, make sure that these parts of this particular Ruger were the same, made the same marks on those bullets. So they did that and they matched. Okay. There was a Browning pistol. There was a Bowie knife. So again, like everything so far is matching up. Also uncovered were the items belonging to several of his victims. But there were also items that were discovered at his brother's houses. So one of them had a tent that belonged to one of the victims. One of them had he gave his girlfriend a Benetton long sleeve white with the green stripe. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So which was only made in England or was sold in England. It was not sold in Australia.
Yeah.
And that belonged in the picture to one of the backpackers that he murdered. And so like all of these different things, there was Simone, Simi, she called herself Simi. She wrote her name on the back of like a canteen. He scratched it out, but with not ultra UV light or whatever, they could see that her name was still under there even after you tried to scratch it off because the marker was still on that plastic. There was, the tents and there was clothes and there was all of these things that were in all these different places. So the brothers would say, I bought that tent. Who says that tent belonged to somebody else? The police? You trust the police? Like,
yes.
God, like you have one brother saying they had nothing to do with it. And the other ones are like, we don't think that Ivan did any of this. He's innocent. So the rest of the family, except for this one brother, is saying that he's innocent. He never did it. He is totally 100% innocent. They would only believe it as if he told them. But Ivan had started telling this lie so long until the day he died, he said he was innocent. Sure. Until the day he died. So they of course started finding all of these things. I mean, the amount of evidence was staggering. And in fact, he had a solicitor, which is a lawyer. So one of his solicitors was like, listen, man, like if you did it, and I'm not saying you did it because that's not my job. I'm just telling you right now, maybe we need to go with the insanity defense because the mountain of evidence is pretty big. And so the next day in court, Ivan fired him. And that was a lot because he was like, nope, he's not my solicitor anymore.
Wow.
And because he was like telling him like, you should go with insanity. Otherwise, like you're going to jail for the rest of your life. Right. So Milat, Ivan appeared in court on May 23rd, but he did not enter a plea. And then on the 31st, he was also charged with seven total backpacker murders. He fired his first defense lawyer, and then on the 28th of June, he sought legal aid to pay for his defense. So they didn't have a lot of money. Meanwhile, his brothers, Richard and Walter, were tried in relation to the weapons, drugs, and stolen items found on their properties. A committal hearing for Ivan regarding the murders began on October 24th and lasted until December 12th, during which over 200 witnesses appeared. When I say the mountain of evidence was staggering.
Gosh. How are there 200 witnesses?
There were so many people who saw him picking up. There were people who knew his love of guns. There were his own family members who were like, yeah, he chopped up a cat, you know? I mean, like he even slept with his sister-in-law. He slept with maybe two sister-in-laws. Like sisters-in-law. He the man wasn't great. You know, he just spent a lot of time in jail and he just thought he was hot shit.
I'm impressed he slept with sister-in-laws and his brother still defended him and said he didn't do it.
Except for Boris. He's one. Boris raised his daughter knowing that she was actually the daughter of Ivan.
Wow.
Yep. So he, based on the evidence, at the beginning of February of 1995, Milat was remanded in custody until June that same year. So then he went to trial, and obviously he was, he gave evidence himself. I mean, like the man just wasn't, he just thought he was very cocky. He thought like he could like run the show, I guess. But a jury did find him guilty of all of the murders. He was given a life sentence on each count without the possibility of parole. So he was given seven life sentences without the possibility of parole. He was also convicted of attempted murder, false imprisonment, and robbery of Paul Onions, for which he received 6 years in jail each. So seven life sentences plus 18 years for those three things. So it'll make everybody really happy to know that on his first day in jail, he was beaten very, very badly by another inmate.
That does make me kind of happy, I'll be honest.
Almost a year later, on May 16th, 1997, he made an escape attempt alongside convicted drug dealer and former Sydney councillor George Savas. The plan failed and Savas was found hanged in his cell the next day. Yikes. And Milat was transferred to the maximum security section at Goulburn Correctional Center in Goulburn, New South Wales. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I should just try to say it with an Australian accent. So in November of 1997, Ivan appealed against his convictions due to a breach of his common law right to legal representation as established in Dietrich versus the Queen. However, the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal dismissed the appeal. Yay! And in 2004, he filed an application with the High Court of Australia that he be allowed special leave to appeal on new grounds. And it was dismissed. Yay! And again, I'm not even going to get into the other things. So on January 26, 2009, Ivan cut off his little finger with a plastic knife. That's okay. I'm fine with that. With the intention of mailing it to the High Court of Australia to force an appeal. But
How is that going to force
I don't know.
an appeal?
But instead, he was taken to the hospital under high security. However, I know he's such an idiot. He's an idiot. On the January 27th, 2009, Milat was returned to prison after doctors decided surgery was not possible. Ivan previously harmed himself in 2001 when he swallowed razor blades, staples, and other metal objects. And in May of 2011, he went on a 9-day hunger strike, losing 15 kilos in an unsuccessful attempt to be given a PlayStation.
Did he think anyone cared about what he was doing to himself?
No, he didn't think that. In May of 2019, Ivan was transferred to the Prince of Wales Hospital and was subsequently diagnosed with terminal esophageal cancer. Following his treatment, he was transferred to the Long Bay Correctional Center to continue his custodial sentences. And on August 9th, 2019, a terminally ill Ivan Milat was moved to secure treatment unit located at the Prince of Wales Hospital following the loss. He lost 20 kilos in the previous week, so he just kept getting smaller and smaller. I did send you a picture of the old Milat, which was not long before he eventually died. He was 74 years old, however, on 27th October 2019, when he died of esophageal cancer and stomach cancer at 4:07 a.m. within the hospital wing at Long Bay Correctional Center. Prior to him dying, he did write a letter to his family requesting that his funeral be paid for by the New South Wales government. That's right. The request was denied by the New South Wales Corrections Minister, Anthony Roberts. Instead, Milat's body was cremated with the full reimbursement of costs to be paid from his prison account. Other developments in his case, he actually had a nephew who also became a killer. His great-nephew, Matthew Muleman, changed his name to Matthew Milat when he was 14. And though Matthew was a toddler when Ivan was imprisoned, a friend said he would brag about his great uncle.
Been a red flag.
I mean,
lots of red flags happening.
I know, like on fire, red. Ouch, my arm. In November of 2010, Matthew Milat, who was 17 at the time, and his friend Cohen Klein, 2 last names for a name, invited their other friend, David Archuloni, out to celebrate his birthday. But instead of smoking pot, as they had planned to do, why couldn't you just smoke pot? Matthew tormented and killed Archuloni with a double-sided axe while Klein recorded the crime on his phone.
On his birthday.
The scene of the slaying was Belanglo State Forest, the same place where Ivan Milat's victims had been found. After the murder, Matthew said to a friend, "You know me, you know my family, you know my last name, Milat. I did what they do." Okay. So Matthew's mindset was thought to be likened to that of the mass shooter looking for notoriety, basically, just like, haha, look at me. In killing his friend and writing on the family name, he guaranteed that his name would go down in history, but not really. I mean, no one's ever going to talk about him.
Other than us.
So in 2012, the 19-year-old Matthew was sentenced to 43 years in prison for his crime. He will have to serve 30 before becoming eligible for parole. So his whole life.
So he's still alive, though.
He's still alive. That was only in 2012. Unlike his great uncle, who stood by his innocence, Matthew wrote poetry about his crime in jail. One poem was called Your Last Day. I'm not going to read it to you.
Wow.
But you know what? His crime did not please his great uncle. He was very dismayed. He was always claiming his innocence. So he was just very upset that his great nephew would brag
poetry about it.
I mean, and then in May of 2015, Milat's brother Boris told a homicide detective who serves as a consultant with the LAPD and the U.S. FBI that Milat admitted responsibility for another shooting, that of a taxi cab driver, Neville Knight, 1962. And after conducting polygraph tests with Boris and Alan Dillon, the man convicted of the Knight shooting, he's convinced that Milat did in fact shoot Knight, but that man is still in jail or still served his sentence. Yeah. And that, dear friends, is my story about Ivan Milat, the backpacker murderer.
That was a good story. I had not heard anything about him.
That was a lot. Like, it's a lot of, it's a lot of information. I was like, oh my God, look at the time. And I cut out like a whole 2 pages. I was like, oh, let me just skip ahead. But yeah, one of the things that there's a 60 minutes Australia episode that's really, really good. There's on oh my gosh, Amazon Prime. I gave you the link.
Yeah.
There's a TV show. It's an Australian true crime show, and they did an episode on this. And it's really interesting. And there've been a couple of other podcasts, but what was really interesting was the amount of how violent the crimes were.
Yeah.
And you don't really get that until you see you have, like, when you see it kind of play itself out, because they happened so close to one another, and they were just like, he was just one person with a gun, and he could overtake 2 people. And I think that surprises a lot of people. So now that's the end of the episode. Thank you. And we'll see you next week. Thank you, everybody.
Love everyone. Send us all the things. Send your stories for true crime, paranormal. Send them to our page. Question of the week suggestions. Voicemails on our website. You know, the usual. We're on all the things. Like us, review us. If you really need our season 1, message us and I'll send them to you. But I took them all down. Executive decision.
Ha.
But yeah, that's it. Just leave us however you want to. Carrier pigeon, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, website, all the places.
All right, everybody. We love you. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.